So, Hare Krishna, dear devotees, we welcome you to today's SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM class. We are privileged and honored to have with us His Grace, PAVAN NITAI CHANDRA PRABHU, who will be speaking to us from SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM today. Today we're treating SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM, 2nd Canto, Chapter 2, text number 35. So, PAVAN NITAI Prabhu, if you're ready, we'll put the verse on the screen and we can start. PAVAN NITAI Prabhu, can you hear me? Hare Krishna. PAVAN NITAI Prabhu? Hare Krishna. Can you hear me? Is anyone hearing me?
Yes, Kaji Prabhu, we can hear you.
Yes, I can hear you.
Hare Krishna. PAVAN NITAI Prabhu is not hearing me. He's busy trying to sort out something, I guess.
Sure.
Hare Krishna, PAVAN NITAI Prabhu, can you hear me? It appears he's not hearing me.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, Hare Krishna, I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
I can't hear. 1 second. Just a second, okay? Sorry.
Okay.
You were like, I couldn't hear anything. 1 second.
Okay.
Wait. Can you hear me? Hare Krishna?
Yes, I can hear you, but
Okay.
can you hear
now
me?
I can hear you now, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, very good. So only you, if you can increase your volume a little bit, that would be very good because your voice is a little
Can you hear
low.
me now? Hare
Yes,
Krishna.
we can hear you.
Is better?
Hare Krishna, thank you. Yes, we can hear you.
Is this better? More volume? Less volume?
Yeah, it's okay now. I think we can hear you clearly now. Okay,
All
so
right.
once again, you're welcome to the SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM Hare Krishna platform. Today we're treating 2nd Canto, Chapter 2, text number 35. So we are honored and privileged to have you here speak with us. If you're ready, we'll put the verse on the screen and then we can start.
Okay. Should I chant Jai Radha Madhav or should I just chant the verse? Or?
Okay. I was thinking that you spoke on this platform. The tradition on this platform is that Srila Prabhupada chant Jai Radha Madhav.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But the speaker also can still chant if you so want. Or
No, Prabhupada can chant. Prabhupada is the best chanter.
Prabhupada has chanted already.
Oh, okay. Perfect. Perfect. So then I can just get on with the verse.
Okay. Okay. So then I'll put this verse on the screen and then you can take it off from there. There we go.
Okay. All right. Okay. So I start, no problem?
Yes, you can start, Prabhuji.
All right. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. All right. Reading from SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM, Canto 2, Chapter 2, text number 35. Bhagavan Sarva Bhuteshu Lakshita Swatmana Hari Drishyar Buddhya Dibhir Drishta Lakshanair Anumapakai. So what's the program? Do people chant or do I just go on to the word for word?
Because of the echoing, so the speaker just chant and then all the participants chant, but they are muted.
All right, sure, perfect. So I'll just go to the word for word then. All right, word for word. Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead. Sarva, all. Bhuteshu, in the living entities. Lakshita is visible. Swa Atmana, along with the self. Hari, the Lord. Drishya, by what is seen. Buddhi Adhibhi, by intelligence. Drishta, one who sees. Lakshanai, by different signs. anumapakai, by hypothesis. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. The personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna, is in every living being along with the individual soul. And this fact is perceived and hypothesized in our acts of seeing and taking help from the intelligence. Okay. Purport. The general argument of the common man is that since the Lord is not visible to our eyes, how can one either surrender unto him or render transcendental loving service unto him? To such a common man, here is a practical suggestion given by Sri Sukadev Goswami as to how one can perceive the Supreme Lord by reason and perception. Actually, the Lord is not perceivable by our present materialized senses, but when one is convinced of the presence of the Lord by a practical service attitude, there is a revelation by the Lord's mercy, and such a pure devotee of the Lord can perceive the Lord's presence always and everywhere. He can perceive the intelligence, he can perceive that intelligence in the form direction of the Paramatma plenary portion of the personality of Godhead. The presence of Paramatma in everyone's company is not very difficult to realize, even for the common man. The procedure is as follows. One can perceive one's self-identification and feel positively that he exists. He may not feel it very abruptly, but by using a little intelligence, he can feel that he is not the body. He can feel that the hand, the leg, the head, the hair, and the limbs are all his bodily parts and parcels. But as such, the hand, the leg, the head, etc. cannot be identified with his self. Therefore, just by using intelligence, he can distinguish and separate his self from other things that he sees. So the natural conclusion is that the living being, either man or beast, is the seer, and he sees besides himself all other things. So there is a difference between the seer and the seen. Now, by a little use of intelligence, we can also readily agree that the living being who sees the things beyond himself by ordinary vision has no power to see or to move independently. All our ordinary actions and perceptions depend on various forms of energy supplied to us by nature in various combinations. Our sense of perception and of action, that is to say, our 5 perceptive senses of 1, hearing, 2, touch, 3, sight, 4, taste, and 5, smell, as well as our 5 senses of action, namely 1, hands, 2, legs, 3, speech, 4, evacuation organs, and 5, reproductive organs, and also our 3 subtle senses, namely 1, mind, 2, intelligence, and 3, ego. 13 senses in all are supplied to us by various arrangements of gross or subtle forms of natural energy. And it is equally evident that our objects of perception are nothing but the products of the inexhaustible permutations and combinations of the forms taken by natural energy. As this conclusively proves that the ordinary living being has no independent power of perception or of motion, and as we undoubtedly feel our existence being conditioned by nature's energy, we conclude that he who sees is spirit, and that the senses as well as the object of perception are material. The spiritual quality of the seer is manifest in our dissatisfaction with the limited state of materially conditioned existence. That is the difference between spirit and matter. There are some less intelligent arguments that matter develops the power of seeing and moving as a certain organic development. But such an argument cannot be accepted because there is no experimental evidence that matter has anywhere produced a living entity. Trust no future, however pleasant. Idle talks regarding future development of matter into spirit are actually foolish because no matter has ever developed the power of seeing or moving in any part of the world. Therefore, it is definite that matter and spirit are 2 different identities. And this conclusion is arrived at by the use of intelligence. Now we come to the point that the things which are seen by little use of intelligence cannot be animate unless we accept someone as the user of or director of the intelligence. Intelligence gives one direction like some higher authority, and the living being cannot see or move or eat or do anything without the use of intelligence. When one fails to take advantage of intelligence, he becomes a deranged man, and so a living being is dependent on intelligence or the direction of a superior being. Such intelligence is all-pervading. Every living being has his intelligence, and this intelligence, being the direction of some higher authority, is just like a father giving direction to his son. The higher authority, who is present and residing within every individual living being, is the super self. At this point in our investigation, we may consider the following question. On the one hand, we realize that all our perceptions and activities are conditioned by arrangements of material nature, yet we also ordinarily feel and say, I am perceiving or I am doing. Therefore, we can say that our material senses of perception and action are moving because we're identifying the self with the material body, and that the superior principle of super self is guiding and supplying us according to our desire. By taking advantage of the guidance of super self in the form of intelligence, we can either continue to study and to put into practice our conclusion that I am not this body, or we can choose to remain in the false material identification, fancying ourselves to be the possessor and doers. Our freedom consists in orienting our desire either towards the ignorant, material misconception or the true spiritual conception. We can easily attain to the true spiritual conception by recognizing the super self, Paramatma, to be our friend and guide, and by dovetailing our intelligence with the superior intelligence of Paramatma. The super self and the individual self are both spirit, and therefore the super self and the individual self are both qualitatively one and distinct from matter. But the super self and the individual self cannot be on an equal level because the super self gives direction or supplies intelligence, and the individual self follows the direction. Thus actions are performed properly. The individual is completely dependent on the direction of the super self because in every step, the individual self follows the direction of the super self in the matter of seeing, hearing, thinking, feeling, willing, etc. So far as common sense is concerned, we come to the conclusion that there are three identities, namely matter, spirit, and super spirit. Now, if we go to Bhagavad Gita or the Vedic intelligence, we can further understand that all three identities, namely matter, individual spirit, and the super spirit, are all dependent on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The super self is a partial representation or plenary portion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Bhagavad Gita affirms that the Supreme Personality of Godhead dominates all over the material world by his partial representation only. God is great, and he cannot be simply an order supplier of the individual selves. Therefore, the super self cannot be a full representation of the Supreme Self, Purushottama, the absolute personality of Godhead. Realization of the super self by the individual self is the beginning of self-realization. And by the progress of such self-realization, one is able to realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead by intelligence, by the help of authorized scriptures, and principally by the grace of the Lord. The Bhagavad Gita is a preliminary conception of the personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna, and SRIMAD Bhagavatam is the further explanation of the science of Godhead. So if we stick to our determination and pray for the mercy of the director of intelligence, sitting within the same bodily tree, like a bird sitting with another bird, as explained in the Upanishads, certainly the purport of the revealed information in the Vedas becomes clear to our vision, and there is no difficulty in realizing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. The intelligent man, therefore, after many births of such use of intelligence, surrenders himself at the lotus feet of Vasudeva, as confirmed by the Bhagavad Gita. Om Ajnanatimandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuranmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatyadesh Dharine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. All right. So quite a lengthy purport with a lot of information. But we can try and understand something by the mercy of Prabhupada. So this chapter is very nice, actually. It's basically describing Krishna in the heart, and it's interesting in the translation. You know, the verse says Bhagavan Sarva Bhuteshu. That the personality of Godhead is visible with every living entity. And Prabhupada translates it as the personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna, is with every individual soul. And then he goes on to explain in the purport how that is. There's so much here, I don't know where to start. But anyway, it's actually very important to know this, that Krishna is present within the heart. There's two birds in one tree. One is the bird that's eating, and the other bird is simply observing. He's watching with a smile on his face. And the eating bird actually is simply suffering his past activities, and he's eating the fruits of his past activities, and he's simply suffering. But there's a verse, I don't remember the verse exactly, it's from the Upanishads, but it says that as soon as this eating bird, as soon as it turns to Krishna, as soon as it turns to this smiling bird, then immediately all of his suffering is finished. It's no more. And you realize that this smiling bird, the Paramatma bird, the Krishna bird, has been with me all this time. I've been recently reading this book by Kadamakanana Maharaj. It's called Kirtaniya Sadahari. It's a very nice book. It's just a small little, what do you call it? Realizations, I guess, that Maharaj had, that he's put on the book. And there was one thing that was quite striking. He said that Krishna is within your heart, and he's with you. And when you suffer in this material world, actually, Krishna suffers even more because he's watching you suffer, and it causes him a lot of pain, to see the devotee suffering so much. But he's not gonna put a gun to your head and force you to turn to him, So he's suffering even more. So as devotees, actually, as devotees, we should feel some compassion for Krishna and we should stop our suffering, because our suffering causes Krishna to suffer more. He's Paradukha Dukhi. He's the original Paradukha Dukhi. So anyway, Maharaj was explaining in that book, in a little paragraph, that we should not suffer, because our suffering is selfish. It's like the son who leaves the house because he wants to be independent and he wants to do his own thing, and so he leaves the house, and then the father is suffering, and the son doesn't care because he's selfish and he just wants to do his thing, and the father is suffering, but the father is not going to put a gun to his head, and he lets him go, and he lets him go through the motions of suffering. Eventually he'll turn around and come back, and the father is simply smiling and waiting, but internally he's also suffering. So this verse, actually, Prabhupada lays it out quite elaborately, and if you read it carefully, it really shows that Krishna really is the only doer, and all of us are just very, very insignificant in comparison. And if anything, the maximum potential that we have is to be an instrument for Krishna, for him to use us. And Prabhupada goes through the whole how you can break the identification with the body if you simply observe the body. If you look, you have these hands, you have your limbs, you have your senses, but obviously we're not these these hands, and we're not our legs, and we're not so on and so forth. So, you know, immediately you understand, okay, I'm not this body. This body is simply a matter, right? And I have no control over matter. I can't use telekinesis and make a table float, or I can't do these things. But I have this body, and seemingly it looks like I can control it. I'm speaking right now with my tongue. I'm pushing out air from my lungs, and, you know, moving around and however I want to, right? But actually, even that's not true, because the truth is that Maya, material energy, is only controlled by Krishna. No insignificant, tiny, minute jiva can control material energy. So how is it that I'm moving my hands and so on and so forth? It's because simply because of desire. By desire, one comes to this material world, and by desire, one can go back home, back to Godhead. But by this desire, see, Krishna's so kind. Krishna's within the heart, and he sees you expressing your desires in this way and that way. I have a desire to move my hand this way. I have a desire to walk in this direction, to go here, to go there, to taste this, to hear this, to see this, to touch that. And Krishna, being the controller, just a second. Krishna being the controller, he's the one. He's the one who actually moves anything, who actually controls anything. And he's so kind, he's so compassionate that he's facilitating us with a material body, and he's facilitating us this illusion that I am in control. That's basically the whole gist of this material world. This material world is here so that you can attempt to play God. You can try and think that you're controlling everything. But as soon as, with a little bit of intelligence, as Prabhupada says in this purport, and intelligence anyway is just a manifestation of Krishna's energy. You know, even we're not even our own intelligence. So with that intelligence, you know, with actually ultimately it starts with the desire. It starts with the desire to not be in an awkward position. It starts with the desire to be in your constitutional position. And as soon as that's there, then Krishna gives you intelligence. And with that intelligence, by reading this purport, simply with a little intelligence, you can very clearly understand that I'm not this body. And in reality, I have no control even over my own body. And I've been identifying myself so strongly with these things, and I'm acting so externally, basing everything with, you know, my identification with this, that I'm in complete ignorance. That's the truth. And when Krishna gives you that intelligence to see beyond, then you understand that even this body is simply Krishna's property. And because it's Krishna's property, it must be used in Krishna's service. That is the original purpose of any of Krishna's multifarious energies, you know? So, and if you can understand that about yourself, initially, we have to at least see that charity begins at home. We understand that, okay, I'm not this body, and actually Krishna is the controller. I'm simply a servant, and I have to know Krishna's desires, and I have to align my desires with Krishna's desires, and then life will be a success. And if you can understand this about yourself, then you can also apply it to others. You can apply it to everyone else in this world, starting from the tiny, insignificant Indragopa insect all the way up to Indra in the heavenly planets, Brahma, and all the other living things in between, the unlimited bacterias that are flying around us. Even they have a Paramatma. Prabhupada says in this one section, he says that there is a revelation by the Lord's mercy when one begins a practical service attitude, and by such mercy, a pure devotee is able to perceive the Lord's presence always and everywhere. So charity begins at home. You understand initially, I'm not the controller. Paramatma sitting in my heart. He's sanctioning everything that I'm doing. And then you understand that wait, hang on, that's the case with everyone. It's not just me. It's the case with every single living entity. Krishna is the only doer. And when Rupa Goswami says that we must pay obeisances to everyone, at least in the mind, and to those that are initiated physically. But to everyone in the mind, it's because we understand that Paramatma is within his heart. Vidya Vinay Sampane Brahmana Gavahastina, I forget. But you see with equal vision, knowing that Krishna's in that person and Krishna's controlling him. He may not be in his constitutional position. He may be in a temporary awkward position, but ultimately Krishna's with him. And everything that he's doing actually is for my purification. We associate with devotees, especially devotees, because when we associate with devotees, they happen to be a little more in tune with the Paramatma, a little more in tune with their Chaitya Guru. And because of that, to the degree that they're pure, Paramatma uses them as instruments. In Bhagavatam, Krishna says that the devotee is my mouthpiece. He's my mouthpiece. So he speaks through the devotees. Maybe we're not on an elevated platform that we can directly speak to the deity, just like Srila Bhaktisiddhanta when he had his Gaudiya Math in Mayapur, the headquarters. And actually, the headquarters was in Calcutta. But anyway, the main Math in Mayapur, if you go there, there's deities of Gandharvika Giridhari and Mahaprabhu, Gauranga Gandharvika Giridhari. And over there, he would go on the altar, and the curtains would close, and you could physically hear him speak to the deities. He would be speaking to the deities. He would be giving the deities reports of how the preaching has been going, how things have been manifesting, how temples are being built, how the printing press is printing such and such books of the acharyas, and so on and so forth. And he would have a full conversation with the deities. Maybe some of us are not on that platform. So, but Krishna is still kind. Firstly, Krishna's appeared in the form of a deity because we cannot see him everywhere. That's the question that was raised in the beginning of this purport, that if we cannot see him, then how do we surrender? Krishna is so kind that simply because we're not qualified to see him everywhere, he's come in this deity form. And in this deity form, as we worship him, we get to know him a little more. Our personal relationship with him becomes more and more manifest. But even higher than that is when you start to see the devotees as a mouthpiece for the deities. You start to see Krishna interacting with you through devotees. And that's actually the process of purification. We have to stay within sadhu sangha. We have to stay within our sheltered area of devotees so that they may be able to see us and listen to Chaitya Guru within their heart and be able to speak to us accordingly. And in that way, we get purified. And that's not it. We have to do the same. We have to cultivate our relationship with Krishna in the heart. We have to recognize him being seated in the heart, and we have to be able to listen. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Radhe Shyam. Can you hear me?
Hare Krishna, we can hear you.
Hare
Okay,
Krishna.
okay.
Yes,
Just cut out.
we're hearing.
we're back. Okay, Jai. So, the point that I was making is that as you cultivate a relationship with Krishna in your heart, it's the same Krishna that's in everyone else's heart. Then your interaction with different devotees becomes extremely relishable. It becomes extremely transcendental. Not just the nice interactions, but even the negatively induced interactions, even like when your guru chastises you, or when someone treats you very not in a very nice way, you start to think in terms of, what is Krishna trying to get with me? What message is he trying to send across to me? Because the truth is that he's present always, everywhere, and we have to come slowly but surely to the platform of being able to recognize him always and everywhere. And as we engage in taking our senses, the perceptive senses of hearing, touching, sight, taste, smell, and so on and so forth, and the working senses of the hands and legs, as we engage them more and more in service of the devotees, in service of the deities, Guru and Gauranga, then slowly but surely your desires, which is all we have really, that's the truth, your desires will become more and more aligned with Krishna's desires. And Krishna's desires are always fulfilled because he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So nothing stops his desires from being fulfilled. And our desires, if they're separate from Krishna's desires, if they're, polar opposite to what Krishna's desires are, then it will only result in frustration. It will never fructify, and you'll never be satisfied. It's very funny, actually. I was thinking of Varnashram. I was thinking of how Varnashram is set up. And generally, Varnashram is set up to take you to the heavenly planets. They slowly, put you on the mode of goodness, and they clear out your anarthas, and you elevate yourself slowly, and you can go to the heavenly planets. That's ordinary Varnashram. But in our system, the Varnashram introduced by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, he called it Daivi Varnashram because it's transcendental Varnashram. And actually, it's quite perfect because the way it works is it just smashes your independence. When you're a brahmachari, you live in a temple atmosphere as a brahmachari, and you have authorities, you have very little independence. You can't even decide which room you stay in. You're put into a room, you're given seva, you're given certain things to do, and you just have to follow. And by US 33 West. Hare Krishna. Yeah. So by following these things, by following the brahmacharya protocol, your independence gets smashed further and further and further. And in the brahmacharya ashram, you should be studying Shastra. And if you study Shastra, then you understand that Krishna is the supreme controller. And when you understand that Krishna is the supreme controller, you see all of the external activities of this world as Krishna personally arranging things for your own personal purification. But if you're not able to see it like that, then you start to think, oh, this brahmacharya ashram is not very good for me. I need my own personal space. I need independence. I need to make my own house, and I need to have my own little area where I have, control. And so then for that, you have the grihastha ashram. And then generally, most people, they go forward into the grihastha ashram. And then they get a taste of trying to control things. But even there, the husband is a representative of Krishna. Actually, becoming a husband is as good as becoming guru, And so as a representative of Krishna, he has to also be dependent on Krishna. And if he's not dependent on Krishna, then even in the grihastha ashram, his independence is smashed. It's smashed. It's completely obliterated, and he suffers in many, many ways. And through all this suffering in the brahmacharya ashram and the grihastha ashram, finally he understands that, hey, hang on, I have no control. I have to throw up my arms, and I just have to surrender to whatever Krishna wants. And when he gets to that platform, then he's qualified for sannyas. And the catch-22, the funny thing is, as a sannyasi, he has complete freedom. No one's going to tell him what to do. No one's going to tell him where to go. He can go wherever he likes, and he can do whatever he wants because he's qualified as a sannyasi. But why is he qualified as a sannyasi? He's qualified because he understands that Krishna in the heart is actually controlling everything, and I have no independence. And once you get this understanding, then you surrender yourself. You give yourself entirely, And as you give yourself entirely to Krishna, ye yatham mam prapadyante tam stataiva bhajamyaham. Krishna says, right, in the Bhagavad Gita, he says that as you surrender, I reciprocate. And if you think about it just a little bit, if you surrender 20%, then Krishna gives you 20% of himself. If you surrender 50%, then Krishna gives you 50% of himself. And if you surrender 100%, then actually Krishna can never give 100% of himself because he's unlimited. We as jivas, we're anu, right? We're small. And because we're small, there's a limit. There's a limit to us. And if we offer our entire selves to Krishna, Krishna na pareham, that's what he says. He cannot repay that debt. Why he cannot repay it? Because he's unlimited. Purnamada, Purnamidam, Purnam abhigacchati. Even if he gives himself entirely to someone, he's still full in himself. He gives himself entirely to Mother Yashoda, but he's still full. He gives himself entirely to Nanda Maharaj, but he's still full. So when the minuscule jiva surrenders by going through all the purificatory processes of life, in the association of devotees and so on and so forth, when he understands that I have to fully surrender myself, Krishna becomes eternally indebted to such a person. And when Krishna becomes indebted to such a person, then he actually comes under such a person's control. Krishna's nature is a little intense. He's not a light personality. He likes to spice things up. He doesn't keep it so simple. And what you'll find is generally his personality is such that he likes to squeeze his devotees, to get the juice, so to speak. He likes to push them to their last limit. I'll give you an example. Every morning there's an abhisar. Okay, abhisar means a rendezvous, a place where the gopis are going to meet with Krishna. Every single morning it's decided in the eternal pastimes of the Lord. And it's very beautiful. The way it's decided is that Vrinda Devi and Purnamasi, they come together every morning and they make a plan. They're like the planning types of persons. And they make a plan that, okay, today Radharani will go here, Krishna will go here, and we'll arrange for them to do such and such activities, and we will arrange for them to meet in Radhakund today. And another day would be in Vamsivat, and another day would be in Suryakund, and another day would be, there's so many places in Vrindavan. If you come here to Vrindavan Dham, you can actually physically go to such places and hear about the pastimes that have taken place in these places. But so anyway, there's an abhisar. And when there's an abhisar, it's decided early in the morning. And after it's been decided early in the morning, the whole day, all of the gopis, the whole day, they meditate on how to decorate this place, how to make sure everything is arranged perfectly, how to make sure that Radharani and Krishna will be completely satisfied with every aspect. And there are so many details to decorating the place. For example, they decorate the floor, the floors of the kunjas with different shapes of emerald, lapis lazuli, ruby, diamonds, different shapes. And they make pictures by taking different shapes of different gems, like mosaic, this mosaic painting. They make pictures on the floor and they stick it with cow dung and clay mixed together, and they stick it on the ground, and they make a very beautiful floor. This is just the floor, and then they decorate the sides with moss and flowers and fruits and leaves, and they even have different, they make like a building just made out of vines, and it has different floors, it has different compartments, has different sections, has like waterfalls and all kinds of, you can't even imagine, how expert they are. And so they spend the whole day doing this, making this entire arrangement. And when it comes to the point of meeting with Krishna in this place, sometimes he just doesn't come. Sometimes he just doesn't show up. So they did all of this. The whole day was arranged, meditating, thinking of how we're going to do it and how we're going to make it so perfect and beautiful. Vrinda Devi and Purnamasi, they're like, planning the whole thing. And by the end of it, the Supreme Personality of Godhead doesn't show up. So then how do they react? How do the gopis react? If it was in our conditioned state, probably we would just get very upset and we would be like, screw this person. We did all of this for him, all of this for his sense gratification, and he doesn't even show up. Forget about this guy. But no, Radharani raises her hands and she chants the last verse of Shikshashtakam. Ashlishya va padaratam pinashtumam adarshanan marmahatam karotuva yatha tatha va vidadhatu lampata mat prananathastu saevanapara. Krishna, you can do anything. You can come You can not come, you can trample me, you can embrace me, you can just not give me your darshan. Whatever you do, I will simply serve you. You are my prananath. You are the Lord of my life. And it appears that Krishna has not come, but he's secretly hiding in a tree, observing them. He's watching to see how they react. He wants to see how they will respond if I don't come. And when he's observing them in this manner, when he hears this verse from Radharani's mouth, he's completely sold out. He cannot believe it. He cannot believe that, how can this person love me so much? I do anything and their love for me just keeps on increasing. Whatever I do, their love for me increases. And they're only in it for my satisfaction. They want no satisfaction from their own end. They make all this arrangement. I don't show up, and they're still satisfied if I am satisfied. And this selfless surrender is actually what our sannyas ashram is what we're trying to get to, all of us in the Krishna consciousness movement, to the platform of complete surrender. Krishna's within your heart. He is the supreme controller. And if you understand this, that he's the supreme controller, he's my supreme friend, and he's the supreme enjoyer, then this is the peace formula. There's no more material problems. Everything is finished. And Krishna becomes indebted to such a person, and he doesn't know how to reciprocate. So, we wear saffron. We wear this color in the sannyas ashram and in the brahmacharya ashram, but specifically in the sannyas ashram. And the saffron color is not. This is actually this means we're followers of Radharani. Why? Because when Krishna left, when Akrura came to Vrindavan, and he took away Krishna, right? In Radha Krishna Ganudesh Deepika, it mentions that Radharani has two colors that she wears. She wears blue because it reminds her of Krishna, and the other color she wears is red. And actually, she likes wearing red even more than blue because Krishna likes to see her in red. Oh, interestingly enough, our deities are dressed in blue and red today. Anyway, so she was wearing red on this specific day, when Krishna was leaving, and so when he left, Radharani became so much intensely absorbed in separation that she never changed that cloth. She never even bathed. She simply bathed in her own tears, crying and crying and crying and crying. And her bright, effulgent red cloth mixed with the dust of Vrindavan, and by her rolling in madness and the tears washing away the color of her cloth, it actually turned into this saffron color. So there are some schools in the Gaudiya Vaishnav community that don't accept Srila Bhaktisiddhanta because he introduced Varnashram, and Mahaprabhu rejected Varnashram, and therefore we're not proper followers of Rupa Goswami and Lord Chaitanya. But they have to understand the heart. They have to understand the purpose behind it. It's not ordinary Varnashram. It's Daivi Varnashram. Anything we do in our Krishna consciousness movement, in our ISKCON, which is just simply modeled after Prabhupada's spiritual master. Prabhupada obviously made a few changes for our sake, but anything we do is a representative of the spiritual world, and by going through Bhagavatam, by associating with devotees, by coming to Vrindavan Dham as much as possible, by worshipping the deities, and primarily chanting Harinam, by chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Krishna within the heart will guide you perfectly to come to the platform of complete surrender. It's getting a bit late here. It's 9:20 now. I think I'll stop speaking. And if there are any questions or corrections or comments, then let's open the floor. If anyone has anything.
Hare Krishna. Chaitanya Prabhu, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Dandava Pranams.
PAVAN, Prabhu, thank you so much for the wonderful class. I have a question on the use of the intelligence.
Yeah.
We have to use the intelligence to, I mean, Srila Prabhupada defines intelligence as the ability to analyze things in their right perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in order for my intelligence to efficiently and effectively analyze things in their right perspective, means that I should have knowledge of that particular thing or situation.
Yeah.
So if I do not have the necessary knowledge about Krishna consciousness, how is my intelligence going to help me?
Well, if it's a dull sword, then it's not going to cut ignorance. The sword of intelligence is sharpened by knowledge, and it has to be sharpened. Well, here Prabhupada explains how by coming in contact with the Paramatma, with Krishna within the heart, we get guidance and we get intelligence. But because we're so dull that Paramatma has to take an external form. So Paramatma takes an external form as Shri Guru, as our spiritual masters, as our not just Diksha Guru, but also Shiksha Gurus, and then as our Guru, as a representative of Krishna within our heart, he will see us, he will observe our flaws in understanding, he'll observe our drawbacks in certain aspects of our Krishna consciousness, and he will slowly but surely sharpen our knife, and as he sharpens our knife, and we have a nice strong knife, then we can use our intelligence. But before that, we should be under some guidance, and if there is no one, if somehow you're in a situation where there's nobody there externally, then you have to take shelter of Prabhupada's books. And there's interesting, Prabhupada said one thing which is very nice. He said that even if the whole movement finishes entirely, there is no devotee left, there's no temple, there's no ISKCON, there's nothing. Simply with one Bhagavad Gita, if someone finds one Bhagavad Gita, opens it, he can restart the whole movement again. That's what Prabhupada is left behind in his books. One second, just a second. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so our intelligence has to become sharp. It has to become sharp by Prabhupada's mercy, by his books, by devotees, by the deities also. Yeah. Jai.
Thank you for the answer.
Hare Krishna.
Dr. Hassan, you may unmute.
Hare Krishna, this I said, my respect of excellencies. All glory to Gurudev, all glory to Prabhupada, and all glory to the assembly. I want to ask a question, but my question will be maybe 3 questions in one.
Okay.
Okay. Sri Krishna, he speak Gita to Arjuna, and when he was speaking the Gita to Arjuna, it was a time of violence. There was a violence.
It was a what? Sorry, I didn't catch that. When he was speaking to Arjuna, it was?
There was a time of violence. There's a war going on.
Yeah, war. Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
and Arjuna is a Shastra, so he's supposed to kill.
Yeah.
Yes. And you do mention that Krishna, when we do something wrong, he suffers.
Mm.
Yes, he's in the heart of everybody. So when you do something wrong, he suffers. So when Krishna speak Gita to Arjuna, and the same Krishna, Prabhupada translated the Gita to us, and
Yeah.
there was no angel speaking to Srila Prabhupada.
There was
And,
no what? Sorry? What speaking to Prabhupada?
There was no angel
Okay, there was no angel.
help Srila Prabhupada to translate the Gita so that
Okay.
we can have the benefit. When you come to the other faith, for instance, in Islam, the angel Gabriel speak Quran to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu to so that they can write it down.
Okay.
And this is a proof that this is from Krishna. And when it comes to the Christianity, Jesus Christ, even the evidence of how he was born is a due of Krishna.
Yeah.
Yes. And if you study the life of Srila Prabhupada, he was so humble and he was so humble, and he don't like violence. And if you read the Gita, you see the greatness of Krishna. Okay, my question is, and at the same time, if you look at the devotees, you see the example of Srila Prabhupada in them, which the devotees which have come across. If you read the life of Srila Prabhupada, you can see the life of Srila Prabhupada in a lot of devotees. So my question is, why is it that if you put all these faiths together, and Gita and the Krishna consciousness or the Gita is 5,000 years ago, and the Christianity is more than 2,000 years ago, and the Islam religion is like 1,500 years ago. So what changes, what make, even in my little intelligence, the faith which comes from the Krishna, the Gita, supposed to be more pious and with not violence, because if you look at the other faiths, you see a lot of difference. And we can see a lot of informations with the faith which come back, they don't have. So my question is, what changes? Why did this come that way? Because in the other faith, if you look carefully, the things that they are doing, which is from Krishna, and compared to Krishna consciousness, it makes them cause more karma for themselves.
More karma, like Arjuna
Yes.
killing.
No, not Arjuna. The second faith, which come like Christianity and Islam. If you look carefully, the things that they are doing, which they think is religious, they are causing more karma for themselves.
Oh yeah, okay, I understand.
Yes. So I think if this one comes from the Gita, it's supposed to be more than Gita. It's supposed to be more than Krishna consciousness. You see. So what changes? What happened? For instance, why is it that the life of Prabhupada and the life of the followers of other faiths, there's too much difference between them if you put them together? I think you get my question.
Well, in our system, in our Krishna consciousness, it's evam paramparam praptam, right? It comes down in parampara. It comes down in disciplic succession. And disciplic succession means it has to be unalloyed and unadulterated and pure. The message has to be clean, which means there should be no personal motive. And when there's no personal motive, then the message can come through us. Like I said, we don't have much control over anything, really. And Krishna's controlling. But if we endeavor to be pure in our heart, then the message that will come through will be absolute truth. Absolute truth is one. Absolute truth is not many. This should be understood very clearly. Whether you're a Christian, whether you're a Muslim, whether you're, you know, a ISKCON devotee, whether you're whoever you are, absolute truth is one. He does not change according to your belief and according to your, you know, cultural upbringing and whatever you've been brought up into. Absolute truth is always absolute. Krishna is a person, God is a person, and he has a relationship. He has a personal relationship with every individual. It's not just the prophets, you know, in Islam, or the messiahs, or in Christianity, or it's not just them. You know, there's a conversation where a Christian man was telling Prabhupada that you have to accept Jesus because he's the Son of God. Okay, and that's what this devotee, this Christian, was telling to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said, you are also a son of God. You know, he said, we're all sons of God. Yes, Jesus is very exalted. He's not an ordinary person. Prabhupada clearly just says he's a Shakti Avesh avatar. You know, he's an empowered incarnation of the Lord who came to preach the message of love of Godhead. He's not preaching anything different to what we're preaching. He's preaching know God, love him, and serve him with no ulterior motives, simply because you're his servant, you know. But yes, Jesus is the Son of God, but so are you. You know, so is everyone else. But the difference between these personalities and us is that they have focused all of their energies in cultivating their relationship with absolute truth, with God. Whatever religion, whatever external means they've used, you know, ultimately in Kali Yuga, it's only through the name. Hallowed be thy name, right? In Kali Yuga, it is just Nam. And by chanting Nam, by calling out to Krishna, by calling out to God in whatever form, sincerely from the heart, like a cry from a child crying for his mother. If you do that, Krishna within your heart will guide you, and he will take you to the right path. There are many paths, especially now in Kali Yuga. There are so much confusion. There's this way, there's that way, and is this right, is that right? This seems a little different from that, that seems a little different. Who is right? You know, it's very difficult to pinpoint what the truth is. But if you are sincere, and if you truly believe that this person is out there, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and I have a relationship with him, and he cares about me, then through your sincerity, you will naturally be guided in the right direction. You know, the message of our sampradaya is come through a disciplic succession of personalities who were able to be completely sincere and connected to Krishna within their heart. They're a set of clean lenses, you know, lenses like glass, but they're so clean. You know, when you see Prabhupada sometimes he's glorified by his disciples, by other personalities. And what does Prabhupada say? Prabhupada says, I have no credit. If I have any credit, my only credit is I followed my spiritual master's order. That is my only credit. All credit goes to my Guru Maharaj, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And if you go to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, what will he say? He will say, I didn't do anything. It is all by the mercy of my spiritual master, Gaur Kishore Das Babaji, who's sitting there and chanting lakhs and lakhs and lakhs. He's chanting so many rounds of Krishna Nam, crying and praying for all the living entities to be connected to Krishna. And by his intense prayers came one perfect disciple, Sri Varshabhanavi Devi, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And he did his work. You ask Gaur Kishore Das Babaji, what will he say? He will say, I am nothing. I am simply able to chant these names because of the mercy that Bhaktivinoda Thakur bestowed on my head. You see these lenses, they're so clean that you see through them. And as you go through each lens, who do you reach to in the end? Krishna directly.
Yes.
And what does he say? He says, yes, it's me. I am the one. I am the one who did it all. I gave the message to Brahma, and Brahma to Narada, Narada to Vyas, and Vyas, and so on. So the point is, and we also brushed upon it in this purport, that Krishna is the only doer. And our sampradaya, our chain of disciplic succession, is a set of clean lenses that are bringing into vision the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We're in the material world, and our eyes are not efficient enough to be able to see Krishna face to face. But through these teachings, if you really take them to your heart, You know, it is guaranteed. Prabhupada says it. Prabhupada says, just like you're speaking to me face to face, just like that, you can speak to Krishna face to face. It's guaranteed. Try the science, give your whole heart to it, and see what happens. And this absolute truth, this message that we're preaching, is not different to what Jesus Christ is preaching. There may be some external differences, but to speak of Jesus, even within our ISKCON movement, you look at our society itself, you see there are different gurus. There are so many spiritual masters, and each spiritual master has his own flavor. He has his own way of speaking. He has his own way of leading kirtan. He has his own way of presenting Prabhupada's message, right? It'll be slightly different, but if you come to the message, it's the same message. And why are there so many different ways of giving one message? Because variety is the mother of all enjoyment. And we're all unique individuals, and we're all different. And we all get attracted to different things. And Krishna, knowing that, he manifests Guru in so many multifarious ways. So many ways to attract all the jivas back to him. You know? Including Jesus Christ and whoever else, if they're provided they're unalloyed and they're preaching the message that came to them in an unalloyed manner. You know, but sincerity of the heart will remove all this apparent contradiction. The reality is there's no contradiction. Jesus Christ was worshiping peacock-feathered, flute-holding Krishna. You know, there is no difference. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. And very, very beautiful.
Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you. Hare Krishna.
Anyone has any question to ask? Please raise up your hand and ask your question.
Well, Hare Krishna, I don't have a question, but I would like to give a little auxiliary to what His Grace PAVAN NITAI Prabhu has beautifully given to the question asked. One thing I wanted to add to what PAVAN NITAI Prabhu has already said is that if we listened carefully to what PAVAN NITAI Prabhu was saying, he talked about the parampara. So actually, Srila Prabhupada did not write the Bhagavad Gita. He did not write the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita, like Bhakta Hassan Urali said, was directly spoken by Sri Krishna to Arjuna on a battlefield. And there was another person who was not on the battlefield physically, but he could see and hear whatever was going on. Just as we are here, I am in a different long place. I can see you, I can hear you. So even though I'm not with you, but I see what you do and I hear what you say. So that person, Sanjaya, because he was blessed by Srila Prabhupada, he was able to see and hear what was going on at such long distance. And so he was recording, he was repeating what was going on. And it's been there for years. And when Srila Prabhupada came, he just gave comment or purport to what has already been said. So your question about God speaking to Muhammad through Archangel Gabriel is similar in the sense that Krishna was speaking to Arjuna, but Srila Prabhupada was not there. And Srila Prabhupada did not require any other, excuse me, say, like divine intervention to be told what he has to say. The parampara, the previous acharyas, like Nitai Prabhu was saying, just as we are speaking based on what we have heard from Srila Prabhupada. So Srila Prabhupada also repeated what he had heard from his guru. So that is one fact. And the other fact is that Krishna uses different means to deliver his knowledge to people at different times and at different places. And so in the case of Bhagavad Gita, it was given on a battlefield, just to tell us that in this age of Kali, everybody is in haste to do this or to do that. But no matter what, one should still have time to hear about Krishna. And so it took place on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. And in today's world, sometimes some of us may say, oh, Prabhuji, I'm very busy, I don't have time. If Arjuna could have time on a battlefield where time is so sensitive that just a second inattentiveness, you could die, could still find time to hear the transcendental teachings of Krishna, then who are we? So there are different circumstances, and it's not going to be the same all the time. Like the way the Bible came about, the way the Quran came about, the Bhagavad Gita came about, they're all going to follow the same trend. No. Okay, so that's what I wanted to add to the beautiful answer PAVAN NITAI Prabhu has already given. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Hare Prabhu. However, we cannot overrule the fact that Srila Prabhupada was hearing directly from the Super Soul also. There was dictation from the Super Soul. And Krishna himself said, if from within, he enlightens, especially the pure devotee, he communicates with the Lord in the heart. And Prabhupada was doing that. In addition to repeating what he had from the Paramparam, he was directly getting confirmations from this person.
Okay. Yes, Prabhupada even said that these purports are my personal ecstasies.
Yeah.
You know, so it's even more in one way.
It's
Okay.
actually higher than an angel or archangel speaking.
Not angels, those are lower beings now.
Yeah.
Jai.
Yeah.
Okay.
Prabhuji, I have a question about the saffron dhoti that Sanyas and brahmacharis wear.
Yeah.
It was interesting how you were describing that is the color of Srimati Radharani. And because she wears red and her tears with the Vrindavan holy dust change the color to saffron. But I had also heard that the saffron color actually represents the flame of fire. Because
Yes, that is also true. Yeah.
All right. So those classes of devotees have been able to burn the material.
There are many layers, you know, there's many layers behind one thing. Yeah, this is one aspect of it for sure. Saffron is also a color of renunciation. That is also an aspect of it. But on a more higher platform, where Gaudiya Vaishnavas means we're followers of Radharani. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said that the perfection of the jiva is to assist the eternal residents of Vrindavan when they are suffering in separation from Krishna. And the way it's been described is once Krishna leaves Vrindavan, the residents of Vrindavan, they're in so much separation. They don't know what to do except for speaking about him, chanting his names, worshipping his deity. They actually made deities of him and basically doing everything that we do within ISKCON, you know? So the model of our society comes from that. It comes from when Krishna left Vrindavan and what the residents of Vrindavan were doing. They were simply, what do you do now? Our life and soul is gone. So we can simply speak about him. We can chant his name. We can talk about how he used to do this and do that and his qualities and his form and his pastimes. So, you know, on that platform, that's what we're followers of. But yes, it's true. This also means
Hare
fire.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
G. Govinda, forward with your class, your question.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, please accept my respectful obeisances. All glories to Sri Prabhupada, all glories to you, all glories to assembled devotees. Prabhu, My question is about the gopis. You were explaining the gopis decorating the arena for Lord Sri Krishna and Srimati Radharani's pleasure. And they do it in such a way that the way you describe it is like a spiritual world. And as you were describing, I was questioning myself, how were they able to decorate it like that with all these ornaments put in together with different architectural designs and all that? Were they using the mystical abilities to do this, or they were just doing it, you know, because they have such a profession, and so they could do it so easily? And after putting all those things together, the beloved Lord will not even show up. Will not even show up. And the idea for him not showing up was to kind of test them.
Yeah. Because
he was hiding on a tree and just watching to see what they are going to do. After putting all this, after all this struggle, now I will not show up and let me see what you're going to do. To test them to see whether they really, really love him.
Yeah.
Okay, if he's not showing up, I'm not showing up, are you going to get frustrated? Are you going to be angry? Are you going to be furious? Are you going to make a decision? You're not going to do such things again? A mundane man will do that. Now, these gopis were all elevated souls. They weren't an ordinary human beings. So I relate this your presentation to our day-to-day lives. That sometimes life becomes so difficult. Sometimes Krishna puts us in such an awkward situation. Even though we have to surrender to Krishna, we have to depend on Krishna, we have to remember Krishna under all circumstances. But sometimes we put to a corner, tight corner, that it is really difficult to stand, really difficult to be in a good mood, really, really difficult to pick your beat and chant. It's really, really difficult to say, Krishna, that will be done. As a condition, so situation like this, what will be your advice? Because I relate that to our day-to-day lives, that all the difficulties come on us. It's also a test, just like gopis were tested,
for sure,
you know, for putting all this together, and Krishna was hiding, watching them. So when we are in difficulty like that, Krishna is also hiding there looking at us.
Yes,
what are we going to do? It is said that a real devotee is known when he is alone. When he's alone, and also when he has problems, when he has difficulties. The reaction of his response to that particular situation will determine what kind of devotee he or she may be. So what would be your advice? What do you say about it when we are in this tough situations, because we are not gopis, we are not that much elevated?
Yeah. Well, one thing is that, you know, Krishna's testing the gopis, right? They're so elevated, and he obviously knows they're going to pass the test. He has no reason to test Radharani. She's the topmost devotee. There's no requirement for him to ever test her. So why is he doing that? Actually, he's showing compassion to us, you know? He's showing compassion to us by testing her, because he wants to show the rest of us what devotion is, what Krishna consciousness is. So this little example, this story that I said, it's supposed to teach us. You know, the thing is, we have to be real. We cannot be artificial. When you go through difficult situations, you know, you're gonna react how you react. You can't pretend to not be disturbed. You can't pretend that no, I'm just as exalted as the gopis, and I'm gonna chant this verse also, this last verse of Shikshashtakam. It's just not gonna work, because it's not really who you are. You know, my suggestion would be to just go through it all, whatever the situation is, whatever emotions you're feeling, whatever, even if it is anger and frustration and whatever it is, you go through it. And Krishna is watching, but he never leaves. Even if the response is not as favorable as the gopis, Krishna's in our heart and he never leaves. And according to our response, he also responds accordingly. According to how he responds, he will create situations in our life, maybe even more intense, till we're just beaten down. It's a hard pill to swallow. I come from South India, and like the people where I'm from in Kerala, they always say, don't worship Krishna. Worship anyone, but don't worship Krishna. If you go there now also, if you go to Kerala now also, people say like this over there, because they say this person, he will ruin your life. He will squeeze the last energy out of you. He will completely, squeeze you till you have nothing left. This is true. This is actually true. And that is why Rupa Goswami says, do not go on the bank of Yamuna. Do not look at the face of Govinda. Do not go and run behind his flute. Why? Because your family, your friendship, your social positioning, everything will be destroyed by this boy. But, the truth is that we aren't these things. We're not these bodies. We're not family members of such and such. We're not part of this society or this country or that nation. We're none of these things. We're Gopi Bhartu Padakamaleo Dasa Dasa Anudas. So, he's going to put us in many, many different difficult, situations. That's how it's going to be. But in one sense, it's like a roller coaster. You don't know what's going to come up next. You can kind of relish it in one way, because Krishna's with us. If you always remember Krishna, and if you never forget him, and if you know that he is with us, even though I'm in this situation, even though I'm responding with anger and frustration, and I don't like what's happening with me right now, I do not accept that things are not going the way that I wanted to go, but still Krishna's with me. So you can just have a prayerful mood and tell Krishna, this is how I feel right now. I'll tell you one thing personally, me, myself. I lead kirtans in the Krishna Balaram Mandir, in front of Krishna Balaram, Gaur Nitai, Radhesham. And this is, for me at least, this is quite an elevated position. This is not something cheap. This is, you're leading kirtans in Prabhupada's home. This Krishna Balaram Mandir, ISKCON Vrindavan is Prabhupada's home. And sometimes I definitely do not feel qualified to do so, because I have a lot of anarthas myself. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he says that if you have anarthas, and if they are very deep-rooted, and if you preach, then you also share your anarthas with others. If you try and do it yourself. So sometimes you may think, oh, I have so many anarthas. How can I preach, or how can I tell anyone about Krishna when I myself am not really worshiping him to the ideal standard? But this is just my personal way of approaching things. I go to Krishna Balaram and I tell them that it is what it is. I'm not a pure devotee. I'm a fallen, conditioned soul. But if I don't sit here and if I don't glorify you, then what will I do with myself? What else can I do? It's like Kaliya, the serpent Kaliya. His prayers are so beautiful. They're so nice. You should go through them. We can relate more with the demons than the devotees, So you hear Kaliya's prayers, and what does he say? He tells Krishna that, my dear Lord, I am a snake. This is my constitution. My nature is to spit poison. This is just who I am, So please forgive me. Please forgive me, because this is who I am. And he offers himself to Krishna. He offers his snake-like body to Krishna, and Krishna accepts it. He dances on his hoods. We're crying and crying. When will he dance on our tongue in the form of the holy name? But he danced on Kaliya's hoods, although Kaliya was a demon. But he was a genuine demon. He just accepted it. He said, yes, this is what I am. I am what I am. Krishna, now you purify me. This is how I am. I don't respond. I do not have Vaishnav qualities. I have all demoniac qualities, but I don't want to be this way. So please, my dear Lord, you do the needful. My dear sirs, such and such is my problem. You do the needful. And from my experience, when you have this attitude, then Krishna appears in such kirtans. He manifests. He seems to get attracted when negative attracts positive. When you bow down and you realize that, hey, hang on, I'm not as great as I think I am. Krishna becomes attracted to this quality. So we can just firstly recognize that we're not great. We're not on the platform of the gopis. We're not able to be artificially exalted. So we just accept that we're very fallen and we need a lot of mercy. We're all mercy cases. And Lord Chaitanya's movement is just a movement of spreading mercy. So we have to just beg for it. We have to cry and cry and cry and beg for it. There's nothing else we can do. There's nothing else we can do.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Very beautiful. Yeah. I want to add something little.
Mm-hmm.
These beautiful revelations. Actually, the gopis decorated the place so nicely. How did they do that? Let us be aware that Yogamaya is the companion of the devotees, the pure devotees especially. So Sikh arranges the background of all Krishna's pastimes, so she was involved. By the same token, the gopis who left their homes half naked were so most gorgeously dressed during the Rasa dance. Where did they get their dress from? Who dressed them like that? Yogamaya was involved. So Yogamaya was involved. Then secondly, this Anukampam verse, if you can put it on the screen, you read the translation. It also helps. Tate Anukampam Susami Samano Bunjana Evatma Kritam Vipakam Ridbagva Pubi Vidana Namaste Jiveta Yomuki Vadesada Yabak. That Dayabak posture. If you can read the translation of that verse and we meditate on it, then that will help us a lot. If we're in any situation, we should remember that verse in addition to everything else. Thank you.
Jai.
So, on these notes, I think we're going to move ahead to conclude this class because His Grace PAVAN NITAI Charan is under some pressure. He has time limitations, so it's very late.
It's a little late.
If we can wrap up by everybody unmuting and chanting one powerful Hare Krishna mantra for Prabhu, for his costless blessings on us. Please, everyone unmute and let's chant one full mantra for His Grace PAVAN NITAI Charan Prabhu as a mark of appreciation.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Krishna
Krishna
Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Hare,
Hare
Hare
Rama,
Hare
Hare
Rama,
Rama,
Rama
Rama
Rama,
Rama,
Hare
Hare
Rama,
Hare,
Hare
Hare
Hare.
Sanchakapatarubhyascha,
Sanchakapatarubhyascha,
Pasundaryavcha,
Patitaram Bhavebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
That
Prabhu.
let me conclude.
Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Sadhji,
Hare Krishna.
say something to mop up the ground so that.
Hare Krishna. We thank you all for being here as always. And we can't thank PAVAN NITAI such a beautiful Krishna Katha. And we hope to have this association more and more in the near future. And we hope to see you all again tomorrow. Tomorrow is Friday. Okay, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Jai Radhe.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
His Grace Nitai, Pavan Nitai Charan Prabhu ki Jai.
Jai.
Prabhupada ki jai.
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 God, Vice Navis ki Jai.
Jai.
That's you.
Hare Krishna.